Chaplain Lindsey Williams has been an ordained Baptist minister for 28 years. While working on the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline, he spent 3 years working with and rubbing shoulders with some of the world's elite oil executives. He lived with them and attended their board meetings. Lindsey Williams is truly inside with the insiders. His latest presentation on DVD, 2012, The Beginning of the End, contains 3 hours of new information, including divisions among the elite, the fate of the U.S. dollar, and a whole lot more. He joins us every month to bring us the latest information on globalist strategies and activities. Chaplain Lindsey Williams, welcome back to the Global Freedom Report. How are you, Lindsey?
Thank you, Brent, so very much for allowing me to be with you today, because things are happening so rapidly.
Well, and we got a lot of time to talk about all of that, but I have a personal question for you, sort of. You lived with members of the global elite up in Alaska for 3.5 years. Is there any more personal story, some kind of something that you wouldn't ordinarily say that you might tell us about any one of these men who would rule the world?
Yes. In fact, I thank you very much for bringing up such a subject, because I don't often have an opportunity to tell those personal stories. Just not too long ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, I remembered the names of many of the people whom I had rubbed shoulders with on the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline, the elite. And I remember I went to one of the individuals. In fact, you know that he died about a year ago, Mr. Ken Furlong, before he passed away. I asked him, I said, where is this man? Where is that man? And I named off a number of the individuals whom I've not kept in touch with over these 35 years, but I knew them back in those days. And I said, where do they live? Brent, I was amazed. Not a single one of the elite that I could name live in a big city. All of them have their primary residence outside of the city, in the country. Many of them live in Alaska. They have long since gotten out of the cities of the United States of America.
Well, that is interesting. I mean, you know, I would think that portends something having to do with the city. I mean, I would take that as a caution that you don't want to live in the cities necessarily.
Well, yes, they know what's going to happen. They understand that the cities will turn into slaughterhouses. And they long since have prepared themselves. They have bought their gold. You do remember the day that one of the elites told me, he said, Chaplain, the only way to protect yourself as far as purchasing power is concerned and put food on your table whenever the crash does come, he said, is our currency. And I said, interesting. What is your currency? And then he said, gold and silver. And I said, you don't use paper? Oh, yeah, we've got a little paper here and there. But he said, nothing that we can't afford to lose. The currency of the elite is gold and silver. And that was about 4 years ago, when you could buy an ounce of gold for $600 an ounce. And I went on radio stations all across America, and I pleaded, I begged, I got on my knees and asked people, please buy gold and get ready for the inevitable, because this is the currency of the elite. And now, of course, those who listened to me back, and my elite friend who told me this back 4 years ago, today you've got $1,600-$1,700 gold, and it's the only thing that has increased that much in value, and you can still use to spare your purchasing power.
You know, and now that you mention that, I would have asked you later on, but now that you mention that, gold and silver seem to have taken a dip. I presume that's a temporary dip. Do you have any insights?
Yes, it positively is temporary. It is going to $3,000 an ounce. You can depend on it. Silver is going to $75 an ounce. They will use gold and silver as a method of backing the new world order currency. It's already planned, and they must take it to that point in order to be able to do it. So it will go up at some point. Don't be concerned about the fact that it has appeared to drop. It really hasn't.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. You hear that, folks? I know a whole bunch of you are out there getting nervous. You know, oh my God, gold has not been going up, silver has not been going up. And you heard it right here from the man himself. Gold and silver will continue to go up. Those are still your best place to keep your money safe. This past week, the House of Representatives passed Ron Paul's Audit the Fed bill by an overwhelming majority, 327 to 98. However, there are no guarantees the bill will pass in the Senate. What's the general position, or is there one, of the global elite with respect to the U.S. Federal Reserve?
Well, the elite are the Federal Reserve. People have oftentimes asked me, Chaplain Williams, please try to tell me who these people are. And I take them to two or three places. Number one, go and look at who is on the board of the World Bank, again, the IMF, the National Monetary Fund, and the Federal Reserve, and you will actually know the name of the present elite. Of course, they will change from generation to generation, but that's the way you tell who these people are. So, yes, that is the elite, the Federal Reserve.
So, what would their position be with respect to this Audit the Fed? That's just passed the House. I would presume they wouldn't like it.
Well, yes, I would gather that would be the case. They know that they have such a hold on government that they will never allow it to happen. It would amaze me if it passes both the House and the Senate.
Interesting. Okay. Spain's economy is now at the forefront of Europe's economic troubles. There have been hundreds of thousands of people participating in hundreds of protests against the International Monetary Fund austerity measures being imposed there. These protest participants include police, firemen, and other portions of the workforce. What should we expect from Spain in the near future? Will it become another Greece?
Well, I think the most important thing coming out of Europe right now is the Libor scandal, Libor scandal, which first broke on June the 27th of 2012. And the Commodity and Futures Trade Commission, CFTC of the United States of America, brought this to the forefront. It actually hit the national news this past week, which I am amazed that it did. As a result of it, the president of the largest bank in the world, Barclays Bank, the CEO of Barclays, Mr. Bob Diamond, actually had to resign this past week. There are some things coming out of Europe that are very startling. Eventually, the European Union, if it continues going the way it's going, will collapse. Now, you will remember one thing that my elitist friend told me back a number of years ago. In fact, he said, Chaplain, whenever the European Union, the euro, whenever you see it collapse, he said you've got approximately 2 to 3 weeks to get out of all paper. And he said if you don't, you'll lose it. And I asked him, I said, what paper are you talking about? He said, any paper. He said whether it be an IRA, a 401k, a Federal Reserve note, a bank account. He said anything that you've got in the way of paper, a stock, a bond, he said it is going to be lost. And he said one of the keys will be that the European Union, the euro, will collapse. And he said immediately, you must tell everybody, get out of paper, because the elite have long since gotten into gold and silver. So it's not going to affect them. They have their holdings well secured. But it's the average American who doesn't have the slightest idea of the danger of paper that's going to be in big trouble at that point.
Do we have a clearer picture? When will the euro collapse?
Yes. In fact, I think I gave on one of your programs one time before. I'm not quite sure. If I didn't, remind me, and I'll go back into it again. I was given just a few months ago something so startling that I was dumbfounded. And I went in studio. I'm not in Arizona right now, but before I left Arizona, I went in studio and produced a 3.5 hour DVD series, new one, brand new. We've never done anything like this before, entitled Secrets of the Elite, because one of them had told me how to know when the euro and the dollar are going to collapse. It was so amazing when he said this, because, you know, most everyone watches the New York Stock Exchange. They watch Wall Street. Wall Street means nothing. It can go up, it can go down. The price of stocks can go any direction. It means nothing whatsoever. The price of crude oil, it means nothing likewise. And so I asked him, I said, how can we know when the collapse is coming? And he said something that very few people hardly even recognize the word. He said, Chaplain, if you want to know in advance and have time to be able to spare your assets, he said, watch the derivative market. He said, this is the key to everything. And I asked him, I said, how do you know? And at the time, he gave me the most startling breakdown of the derivative market. I have never heard anything like it. In fact, it was so amazing to me. Until that's the reason we did this DVD series. And he said, Chaplain, he said, derivatives are the way that the elite will bring the financial collapse to the world. And he said these were devised back about 45 years ago. The market has grown and grown and grown till it's approximately 1 quadrillion, if anybody can even imagine such as that. And he said, whenever the derivative market begins to collapse, he said at that point, you had better be out well protected, have all of your your assets secured, because he said that is going to be the key to the collapse of both the European Union currency and the American currency. And he gave me 3 things. He said, number 1, you'll see a crack in the derivative market. He said, number 2, this will bring on currency wars. And folks, please, you must do a crash course on derivatives immediately. If you don't know what they are, we can make it possible for you to know.
Now,
and then he said,
Pastor, I just want you to know, we had Tom Filer on your recommendation on the show, so we went through derivatives and he discussed that with our listeners in length. So we have definitely taken that to heart, the issue of the derivatives. But I'm curious if you would have any conception of, not an exact date, but any kind of approximation at what we're looking at. Are we looking at days? Are we looking at weeks? Are we looking at the end of the year? Any idea?
The elite told me, and in fact I was in touch just a few days ago with my elitist friend who has given me information now, and they told me that they have intentionally postponed the collapse in order to be able to create as much massive debt in every nation, in every city, in every county, in every state, all over the world. They are right now in the process of creating as much massive debt as they possibly can, because this is the method whereby they will step in and they say, we hold your bonds, we hold your paper. You have no choice. You'll have to accept our New World Order. Now, the collapse should have taken place the last year of the administration of George Bush. They have actually been creating debt since then, massive debt. I am very concerned about 2 times. Now, please, this is not something that my elitist friend have said you must count this as the last word. Number 1, I'm very concerned about October. If Mr. Obama sees that he's losing, this man might do anything, and it might bring on some different things. Secondly, after the inauguration, I think you should have everything already done, all assets secured, at least shortly after the inauguration of whoever becomes president.
Okay, now I have a question from a listener, and he wants to know if you have any financial information regarding Canada's banks and economy. He says, I understand this is a world issue, all currencies are doomed, but if you could speak for maybe a minute or so on any tips for Canadians that you may, have anything at all you can tell them. That came from Charles up in Canada.
The New World Order is a new world order. It's not just the United States of America. It's not just the European Union. Whenever they allowed the collapse of the currencies of the world to take place in order to be able to bring in totally their new world order, their new currency, they will see to it that every single nation in the world, whether it be Canada, the United States of America, no matter what it may be, they will see to it that everyone is basically in the same condition.
Okay, fair answer. Now, I want to back up to Greece for a moment. There have been numerous projections that there is more than a 90% likelihood that Greece will leave the European Union. Do you have any insights? Do you know anything about it? Is it going to happen? If it does happen, what happens to the EU overall?
Yes, I very definitely do. In fact, this was discussed with me just recently, and they said, Chaplain, don't worry about this. They said, this is no concern whatsoever. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, if Greece leaves the European Union, if Greece declares bankruptcy, if Greece goes under, he said, this is not going to bring the world's financial system down. He said, none of this is going to happen until we have created the amount of debt that we want to create in every nation in the world, not just Greece. He said, this is a new world order. So my prediction is based on what one of my elitist friends told me just recently. If Greece exits the European Union, if Greece declares all-out total bankruptcy and completely fails as a nation, this does not necessarily mean that the euro is going to collapse.
Okay. Now, let's move over into the Middle East. We have a correspondent in Saudi Arabia, and he has told me that there are rumors, and they are only rumors, and they're very quiet rumors, that the king is not well. I spoke with him this morning to follow up on those discussions, and he said that there seem to have been some minor, quiet changes in law, and as a general rule, when they have changes in law, it means there's been some kind of change in government, but there's nothing overt, nothing obvious going on. Do you know of anything that might indicate the Saudi king is ill, and what would that mean for Saudi Arabia? Does it dovetail into the global elite's plans for the kingdom and for the Middle East in general?
Approximately a year and a half ago, I was told everything that was going to happen in the Middle East. And there again, I produced a 3-hour DVD series entitled The Middle East, The Rest of the Story. So far, everything has happened exactly as they said it. And keep in mind that they told me each nation, one after the other, that would be given to the Muslim Brotherhood. And I laid it out one after the other. First of all, there was Egypt and Mubarak, and he fell. Libya, Gaddafi, it took them a little longer to get him out. Now we've come down to Syria, and Assad has set them back approximately 6 months. This is very much to your advantage. Now, you say, could the elite be set back in that program? Positively. In fact, they had already intended for Egypt, Libya, Syria, and some other countries to fall, be put into the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood. And if you will remember, at the time, my elitist friend told me that the last country that would have revolution to the point that the country itself would go into massive chaos, as Egypt and Libya has, and as Syria is, was Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia at some point will have the same problem these other countries are having, because the elite intend to cause such chaos that they will fall. At that point, they want to take the price of crude oil to $150 a barrel. That's what it's all about. They are giving these countries one after the other to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, but you don't have any direct information about some attack or something on the king. This is like one of the most secret societies in the world. Nobody knows anything about what goes on in Saudi Arabia, in the kingdom, or virtually nobody knows. And I thought if anybody might know, it would be Lindsey Williams. So I gather from that you haven't heard anything direct about any kind of an attack to remove the king to allow for, what they want to do with Saudi Arabia.
Well, I haven't asked. I mean, this is the first I've heard it, is on your program. And as a result, when I was on the phone with my friend the other day, I did not ask this question. I imagine if I had asked, he more than likely would know. He's been talking about some other things so much lately that's so important. The Middle East is a major, major issue, and something happened on the north slope of Alaska at Prudhoe Bay up on America's big oil field just a few days ago that it should be hitting the front headlines on every newspaper in America.
And what is that?
Well, just 2 days ago, I received a communique from my elitist friend, and he said that the Liberty rig has stopped drilling. Now, let me back up just a moment and tell you about it, to give you some background. You'll remember it, and I gave it on your program. It's in the archives. 1 year ago, this summer, the largest crude oil drilling rig that's ever been built on the face of the earth was moved to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. That's America's big oil field up on the Arctic Ocean in northern Alaska. The Liberty rig began drilling on a place called Gull Island. My book, The Energy Non-Crisis, is the only place that you'll ever find out anything about that. I was there the day that I watched that oil pool proven, and they've waited 35 years intentionally in order to bring it in because they wanted the price of crude oil to go where they wanted it to go. 1 year ago, they moved this Liberty rig there. They started drilling, and they were going down over 40,000 feet. They were going to a super deep well, and they intended to find abiotic oil. Only a few days ago, the Liberty rig stopped drilling. And I said, now, wait a minute. What is going on? He said, Chaplain, we do not want to bring that oil pool in until, please, you must notice this, until we have the price of crude oil to $150 a barrel. Why is crude oil not already $150 a barrel?
Yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that.
Yes, Syria was already supposed to have fallen and go to the Muslim Brotherhood. But Russia stepped in, and everybody backed off. Hillary Clinton backed off, America backed off, our State Department backed off, England backed down. Everybody was scared to buck Mr. Putin. Folks, this is so important you can't possibly imagine. Putin stepped in, came to the rescue of Syria and Assad, and has put the elite's program of giving the Middle East to the Muslim Brotherhood, has put them back approximately 6 months. They do not want to bring in that oil pool on the North Slope of Alaska until they have the price of crude oil to $150 a barrel. They've got problems because of Syria and Russia stepping in. Not only that, but now they've got the Bakken oil field in North and South Dakota and Montana that is going full speed ahead, and they don't want that to have its full fulfillment until they get the price of crude oil to $150 a barrel. Right now, you and I, folks, everyone out there in Brent Johnson's listening audience, you have a glorious window of opportunity right now that is so marvelous you cannot imagine it. So they stopped the drilling of the Liberty rig for 2 reasons. I gave you the first one. The Middle East, they haven't accomplished what they wanted as fast as they wanted it, so the price of crude oil is not $150 a barrel. Secondly, you remember that when BP, and they're the same ones as are drilling on the Liberty rig at Gull Island, when BP was drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, they hit over 40,000 pounds per square inch when they went down 40,000 feet with a super deep well, and they did not expect it, and it blew the pipe out of the ground. It blew up the rig. It contaminated the Gulf of Mexico.